Alright, and we're live. Welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. I'm Lio, and this is going to be part 3 of Baal HaSulam and the Future Society. Part 3. Let's go. Welcome everyone. This is part 3 in this series of Baal HaSulam, the Yehuda Ashlag, the Kabbalist, also known as Baal HaSulam, and his writings about the future society. And if you've missed the first 2 episodes, I strongly recommend you take, well, at least, you can like double time through the first 2 episodes because they really give a good introduction. And today I'm gonna still cover some of the same ideas I covered before, but I'll do it much quicker, and then I'm gonna dive into the sort of the heart of where we are today in this process of talking about the future society according to Baal HaSulam. If you're new to Kabbalah, don't worry, you're in good hands. There's an amazing team in the chat, both on YouTube and on Facebook. They're ready to take your questions. We're going to try to answer your questions here, obviously. And also, there's a special Zoom connection, just like an intimate Zoom connection with like a few dozen people, where you get to ask any question and follow up and go deeper and deeper as much as you want. So try not to miss that if you can. If you have this time on this lovely Sunday, we're more than happy to try to answer every question. It's a vast topic. Also, if you're new to Kabbalah and some things you're not sure of, don't worry, there's an amazing self-study course that you can take, and it will clear up a lot of the misconceptions and give you some of the basics and some of the concepts, so you can at least start listening to Kabbalah Explained Simply with upgraded set of ears. So you have that as well. And obviously, if you've been here before, you know what this is about. If you've been to the latest retreat we just had in the Catskills just 2 weeks ago, then some of this, the material is taken from a mind-blown session that I did at the retreat. So we're going to have an opportunity to expand a bit more and take questions and kind of delve into additional aspects of the future society. So let's jump into that and see how much we can cover. Maybe there's going to be a part 4. I don't know. So, by the way, I'm Leo. If you don't know me, I'm an instructor with B'nai Baruch. I'm broadcasting live from Israel right now. We're doing well, thank you, and we're very happy to give you this unique peek into the mind of one of the greatest Kabbalists and all around humans who lived in the 20th century, and we were lucky to have him leave so much in writing for us. And also, I see that they're already great friends from Mario from Seattle. Mario, you know a lot of this stuff already, so you're a pro. Carl from Pennsylvania, Robert from the UK. We have Lisbeth from the Netherlands. We have more friends from the Netherlands. From where else? We have Louisiana, Busy B from Louisiana, Mihaela from Romania, Ceface, Renata from I don't know, but nice to be here, and more friends. So again, introduce yourself, write questions, and we'll try to take them as we go. And Hayes, hello Hayes, from Tennessee, lovely to see you again. All right, so let's jump in for lack of a better way to get started. Here's this story. I used it to start the first 2 chapters, so I'm going to do it again. Baal HaSulam opens his introduction to the writings of the last generation with this interesting text. He writes, "There's an allegory about friends who are lost in the desert, hungry and thirsty. One of them had found a settlement filled abundantly with every delight. He remembered his poor brothers, but he had already drawn far off from them and did not know their whereabouts. What did he do? He began to shout out loud and blow the horn. Perhaps his poor hungry friends would hear his voice, approach him, and come to that settlement that is filled with every delight." And he continues and he says, "So is the matter before us. We have been lost in the terrible desert along with all of humanity, just like we see here today. And now we have found a great abundant treasure, namely the books of Kabbalah in the treasure." This is where you come in. You found those books. They satisfy our yearning souls and fill us abundantly with lushness and contentment. We are satiated, and there is more. Yet we remember our friends who are left hopeless in the terrible desert. There is a great distance between us, and words cannot bridge it. For this reason we have set up this horn to blow out loud so that our brothers might hear and draw near and be as happy as we are. And these brothers in the desert, they're not some metaphorical brothers in some metaphorical desert. These can be people in your family, friends, relatives, colleagues, people from high school that you run into, the guy that you know, the postman, the Uber driver, anyone who feels despaired because the world is, well, you know, less than great, and we see that the world is in turmoil. It is full of wars, and I mean, seriously, what's up with that? We thought we put wars behind, right? 20th century, First World War, Second World War, the fall of the Berlin Wall. We thought that's it. We can lay down our arms and get friendly with each other. But apparently, not everyone felt this was the way to go, and so we're not done yet. There's war, there's terrorism, there's pandemics, social upheavals, political rifts, pollution, ecological crises, and not necessarily those that we know about or speak about. Sometimes what we're told is not exactly it, and it's actually worse stuff lurking beneath the surface, so to speak. Agricultural problems, depression. I'm sure you can add more. I mean, it can even be a simple thing as like I don't know, what job I should get. Like what's really will give me some meaning, right? Or how to find a proper mate, or how to make sure that the tenants in my building don't have violent fights every other week, right? It could be the smallest things, but they fill our lives and they overwhelm us, and that's really what it comes down to. If we zoom in to society, as I said, forget the geopolitical stuff, which is huge and massive, and a lot of it is already in motion, and we can't really affect it. What about what's happening in society? Right, we have automation is threatening about 40% of our jobs, and so as we know them, they're gonna disappear. I will say, and Kabbalists say, that even up to 90% of our jobs are unnecessary. So not only will automation replace jobs, a lot of jobs will become redundant and antiquated and downright damaging. And like, why are we doing this? Why are we manufacturing this stuff which nobody needs, right? So this is one sort of looming threat. Where am I going to find my next paycheck? Or I'm studying now in college. What should I do when I graduate? Right? It's not so clear. It's this bubble, that bubble. Where am I going? Other challenges that countries are facing on a national and international levels. We have immigration. There's no question that there's rampant, unchecked immigration all around the world. People have always been moving around and immigrating, but now it seems like the gates have opened, whether it's by design or people are just tired, or for whatever reason. We have masses of people from very different cultures, not always compatible, moving into other countries and changing the delicate balance of those societies. So we have immigration, polarization in the political arena, as we said, religious radicalization, or just in general, a religious zeal that's taken over a big chunk of the world, especially felt in the Middle East, but not only. Obviously, terrorism, different types of terrorism happening on different levels, serving different agendas. General geopolitical tensions that affect countries that are far from the lines of the conflict. You don't have to be in Ukraine to feel the effects of the war in Ukraine. You don't have to be in Israel to feel the effects of the war with Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in the south and the Iraqis and the Houthis. It is affecting everyone. So some would say we're already inside World War III, and we're just not. It's just moving along, right? It's just a different kind of war, but it's a war nonetheless. We also have a collapse of social ties. So this is probably one of the things that is most felt by almost everyone I spoke to. I was in New York last week. I talked to people, and people, they complain that they're not able to make meaningful connections. I'm talking about young people who should naturally, intuitively, abundantly make connections with people, and they don't, they can't, they won't, they're afraid, they feel alienated, they feel more comfortable staring at a screen than looking into someone else's eyes. They have a hard time starting a conversation or knowing even what to do, almost like we lost some of those natural instincts that helped us form ties and survive in the savannah not long ago on the cosmic scale, and we sort of gradually lost them as we moved to the 21st century, and it's very worrying. It's happening between people. It's happening inside the family unit. We have social networks, different types, different kinds, but most of them just beget more depression, more alienation and disconnection. You think you have a lot of people around you, a lot of friends, but it becomes a sort of a chore or a job that you have to do to maintain these online impressions, right? Get traffic, get likes, engagements, do things for someone that you don't even know if they're genuinely interested in you. So you have that, and then there's also a counter reaction to that. There's sort of a retreat from that. I know I've been to a bookstore in New York, Barnes and Nobles, and you walk in and I thought it would be empty, but lo and behold, it was full of people. So people had like this reaction to excessive screen time. Now they're sort of moving on. So this oscillation. You have cyberbullying on the networks, and you have physical street bullying on the streets happening in certain areas, depending who you are, what you believe in. If you're a college student, you may be embroiled in aggressive, violent even, protests and demonstrations, pro-Palestinian, anti-Palestinian, all that stuff. In general, people are having a hard time taking responsibility for anything that they're doing. And last but not least, and I think it's the underlying cause, is the loss of meaning. We are engaged in this this constant search for fulfillment, for deeper pleasures, and pleasures that cannot be fulfilled by the material stuff we have around us. So you could say it's a sort of a spiritual awakening. You can say it's our frustration from our inability to attain this. Whatever it is, people are driven to ask these questions. Why is all of this happening? Why am I here? I didn't choose to be born. I didn't ask for all of this. Why was I brought into this world, and what am I supposed to do here? All those things are creating a tremendous stress on our psyche. Couple that with the general desensitization of our senses, and we're in this constant search for pleasure, which never comes, and when it comes, it's not enough, or it doesn't touch us in the right place, in the right way, or it doesn't stay, and we can't keep it, and all the rest of it. So this is just a natural state of the evolution, but it doesn't end there. The people who were supposed to give us the answer that we would look up to, people in power, whether you live in a theocracy or a democracy or a more autocratic country or more totalitarian country. I don't know if you can watch this in a totalitarian country. Maybe we actually have students from Iran and other places. Whether it's more dogmatic or pseudo-democratic, whatever it is, there is a prevailing issue that runs throughout all these different regimes and social structures. So people tried to come up with answers, but they can't. And I'm asking you right now, can you name a developed country where people are genuinely happy? Put it in the chat. Let's see if you can name one country where people are, generally speaking, I'm not saying like you have a cousin in Finland who live in an igloo and is pretty content. He goes fishing, brings the fish, he eats the fish, he meets a couple of guys in the bar that's like 5 miles from home in another igloo. Sorry for the stereotypical description, but not something like that. On the whole, a country where people are generally hopeful, happy, excited. They have their eyes look up, Yes, I knew someone would say Bhutan, so good, kudos to you. But Bhutan is such an exception to the rule that it only proves the rule. It's a monarchy, has a king, and that particular king was interested in the happiness index. He actually just rallied a bunch of educators and scientists to come there and study it and try to propagate it, disseminate it around the world. They haven't managed to do it yet. And yes, it's easy to do it in a monarchy or a place that's tightly governed, but there's no guarantee that his successor will continue that. If the state of affairs changes, if an external threat comes, it might not work. And we'll see a little later why, if we don't collaborate also on the international level, any changes we do nationally will ultimately run into a wall when we put them against the other nations around them. So, because then every nation is like an individual. So if you manage to correct your society, you have to then correct the global society as well. So Bhutan is an exception, but I'll give you that. New Zealand is also another one. I'll give you a hint. I have a friend there, but I also have friends who came back from there and says like, it feels a little stuck, and it's like it's not moving. It's a beautiful place to look at, but even as a tourist, it's hard to move around there. So I don't know. I haven't been to New Zealand. Maybe it's one of those places, but I don't know if there's room for everyone. Let's keep going. So we have Baal HaSulam. Baal HaSulam was like I said, an all-around outstanding human being, not just the Kabbalist, not just the greatest Kabbalist of the 20th century, and someone who was able to bring down these exalted ideas that he got from his attainment down to the level where everyone can attain it. Everyone can make steps in that direction. But he lived in a fascinating time. In his lifetime, he saw gramophones and nuclear bombs, the rise of automobiles, planes, and the Bolshevik Revolution, the start of sort of communism on a large scale in Russia, and propagation of Marxism in World War I, and the market crash in World War II, and obviously the establishment of the State of Israel. All those things happened in his lifetime, and he was a learned person. He read everything, not just religious texts, and he wanted to disseminate Kabbalah in the language of his contemporaries. So everything you're going to see today and hear today comes from the writings of Baal HaSulam, and it's only being supported by additional study that's been done recently. But this is stuff that Baal HaSulam, Yehuda Ashlag, Baal HaSulam, the master of the ladder, that he wrote. He wrote most of it about almost 100 years ago, most of it, somewhere between 100 years ago and like 80 years ago, more or less, right? So that's how far back he was thinking about those things and looking far into the future on what needs to be done. And Baal HaSulam writes, in the same writings of the last generation, where he talks about the society, he says, it is upon us to remember that the purpose of the whole creation is to bring the creatures to equivalence of form with the Creator, as it is written, and cleave unto him. So Baal HaSulam was a Kabbalist. His goal, his purpose was to help other people make contact with the Creator, the upper force in nature, through equivalence of form, by correcting their desire. This is what the wisdom of Kabbalah speaks about. And he wrote about it. He wrote about the evolution of desire from the beginning of creation until today, and the 4 phases of direct light, how the light created this vessel that can receive all the pleasure. And he wrote about the 3 axes from the A state through the B state, the shattered state where we are today, to the C state, the final state of correction where we go back to that state of oneness with the Creator, but consciously aware through our own efforts, and enter into a relationship with this upper force, not some old guy in the cloud, but the upper force in nature, through equivalence of form. That is the main thrust of Baal HaSulam's writings. But he also foresaw that people are, as people are, they might try to kill one another more than once and in more than one way. And so he wrote these principles of the future society, what he called the last generation, because he believed, he saw, this wasn't a belief, he saw that we are at a time humanity is ready, the desire is ripe to start asking these deeper questions and hear those deeper answers and start to act on them. Basically, kind of tried everything and everything failed. So now we may be open to, hearing an alternative. That's pretty much it. So Baal HaSulam took the time. He took the time to write about the future society in the hopes that people, and especially the people in Israel, this nascent country that was just born out of the horror of the Holocaust, will look to this as their mission, as their calling, their destiny of the Jewish people, and will establish a society that can actually live according to some of those principles as they work on their spiritual attainment and work to become these servants of the Creator and of humanity in this work. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. There are other Kabbalah Explained Simply that will explain this simply in simpler ways. I want to keep going because it's going to be a short recap. Baal HaSulam wrote a lot, as I said. You can see that he didn't spare the ink when it came to writing about the last generation and all these different aspects of human desire, and do we have free choice and peace in the world, and the mutual guarantee, and he published a newspaper. He did a lot, and we covered some of those more in depth. Specifically, as I said, the writings of the last generation and the newspaper, the Nation, they contain sort of a distillation of his social writings. And he also met. He basically was like, if you want to talk, I'll talk to you. He could be a rock, and you're listening, he will talk to you. That's a real saying about him. So he met with all the leaders of the new settlement in Israel, Ben Gurion and others. You can read about it. And again, he's not the first to write about society. Plato wrote about society in the Republic. Hobbes wrote about it in Leviathan. Thomas More wrote about it in Utopia. Marx wrote about it in The Capital. Kant wrote about it in the Metaphysics of Morals. And Machiavelli wrote about it in The Prince. And I'm sure there are others. Each one tried to look at society from his own lens, which was nonetheless egoistic. They were not corrected people. It's not like Baal HaSulam, who reached his highest degree of correction that he can make on himself, and then also started to disseminate that wisdom and try to work to bring more people, greater and greater circles, into this state of correction. No, these people saw the world through a very unique lens. For example, Machiavelli, and he looked at the world as a power struggle where everything is kosher to attain power, and power is the highest attainment. And we know today it's only one of the desires of the world to receive: food, sex, family, money, power, honor, knowledge, right? So it's on the spectrum, but it's not the end all be all. But for Machiavelli, at the time that he wrote this in Italy, that was it. And what to do and how to get along, and all the principles of power, and he got it. But was that a sustainable mode of society that can invite people to discover their point in the heart and reach their highest potential as they discover the spiritual world? No. The answer is no. Oh, we already have some questions. We didn't even get to this is still a recap from last time. Okay, I'll do one. Grand Rapids. Was Baal HaSulam as relevant in the community in his time? Were the reverends only built after his death? Are there any so weird, are there any people today that have attained his level of the study? Great question. And as I said, yes, Baal HaSulam took great care to write using the language of his day. He talked about, and it's the next slide we're starting to talk about. He talked about thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Even though in Kabbalah we don't talk about those, we talk about the force of reception, the force of bestowal, and then the correct relationship between the two, to receive in order to bestow. But there are other ways to synthesize these forces. As we know, you can receive in order to receive. That's the lowest degree. That's the sort of almost, animal level egoism that you find in people. I just take for myself, and I don't even care that what you see about me. It's almost like an animal. Then you have bestow in order to receive. So I can pretend that I'm giving. Right? I'll give a little bit here. I'll donate my time here. I'll do a little something here. But I know that in the final calculation, I'm going to receive something back to myself. Right? That's the bestow in order to receive. That's a more civilized person. Still, these two degrees are still the selfish, the egoistic synthesis of these two forces. But as you go up the ladder, you reach just a point of bestow in order to bestow, and then receive in order to bestow, which is the highest level. You can receive everything that the Creator wants to give you in order to pass it on to everyone. And you're like a pipeline. So what am I saying? Baal HaSulam knew how people wrote. He knew about Schopenhauer, he knew about Spinoza, he knew about Marx, he knew about everyone who wrote, and he saw the opportunity, and that's why he wrote in that language, in those writings, these bits of text that I showed before. All these texts, a lot of them, and especially these booklets here on top, and the newspaper and the introductions, and even these what we call the unpublished, but they're still available. They're all using very sort of modern language on purpose. And he met with Ben Gurion, and Ben Gurion wrote a letter. He said, Baal HaSulam would come to me. He wrote it to his son, to Rabash, who is our teacher's teacher, right? And he said, your father would come to see me, and I would want to talk to him about Kabbalah, but he would want to talk to me about society, right? So he was known. Was he world-renowned? Probably not. Was he known inside a certain community? Absolutely. Rav Kook was the chief rabbi of Israel at the time, and knew and appreciated him, and worked very hard to avoid, to ensure that no damage comes to him. So Baal HaSulam speaks about those forces using this language. He asked the Creator to lower him so he can speak in this language. And the problem is, for us people, is that we know how to receive. We all know very well how to receive. We don't know how to give. That's a problem. In nature, as you advance, as you go up the ladder, as your ego grows, you're expected to live more in harmony with nature. And according to the disharmony in which you live with nature, you can say get punished. We don't like this word because there's no punishment really, there's correction. But Baal HaSulam uses this word to be very clear that you're getting hurt. You jump from a 10-story building, you're gonna break every bone in your body and die on the pavement. Why? Were you punished? Maybe you could say, no, you were corrected. Not in this life. There's a continuation, but your form, this current form that was clothing your point in the heart, it was corrected in the most violent way. Okay, what we can call punishment, or we can call accident. But there's no accidents. There's laws, and there's breaking the laws. And we're right now breaking the law of giving, and we are being punished, and harshly. We are punished on every level in nature. Still vegetative, animate, and speaking. Right? You have earthquakes, tsunamis, all the stuff at the beginning of the 20th century, fires, all those on the inanimate level. Then on the vegetative level, the terrible famine and agricultural plagues and all of that. Then on the animal level, pandemics and you name it. And now on the speaking level, here we are again, suffering depression and suicide and war and everything else. So we are being punished quite clearly, by nature. It's trying to tell us something, but we don't like to listen. So, and Baal HaSulam, again, he talks about in the article, The Freedom, he talks about the evolution of our universe, our solar system, and the Earth as a product of these two forces at work. So he talks about the crust on a planet that is being heated from below. That's one force, and then cooled from above, that's another force, and until they reach equilibrium, that takes however many millions, billions of years for this crust, this thin layer where we can live on. And this is really life. It's always a struggle between two forces, and this thin line that allows us to live in the middle. And humanity is no different. Again, we feel comfortable in a given state, a given society, until we start to suffer, until we cannot take the suffer any longer, and then we begin to search for a new form of government, a higher degree of equivalence with the quality of love and bestowal. Okay, we'll get back to it, but that's the sort of the drive. And these forces, as we said, evolve our will to receive, and consequently our physical bodies that we see here. Hint in Kabbalah, when they say will to receive, when they say body, they talk about the will to receive. Don't think they're talking about your body, this protein. This is simply a material, a corporeal expression tied to your experience in this world. But the body in Kabbalah is the will to receive. This is the body. And it lacks a head right now, by the way. That's why, just like headless chickens. So we are in this is the natural state of affairs. This is where He brought us. Okay, no surprise there. You see the pollution, everything is sort of far from harmonious with nature, because we see a reflection of our egoistic evolution of desires. So food, sex, family, money, honor, power, knowledge, all those evolved to want more pleasure at less pain or less payment, at the expense of everyone and everything. That's unique to people. No other creature lives this way. When a lion devours, it devours only what he needs to eat now. There's no devouring, 100 times more, freezing some, storing and then selling at a profit. None of that. This is human nature. And our social structures, they reflect the same egoistic tendencies. So economically, politically, geopolitically, our measures for education, for success, the index of our happiness is unfortunately measured according to our egoistic desires. Only receiving, no giving. Sorry about that. Only receiving, no giving, and we see the results before us. So let's look at the results. And this is really the heart of it. Let's look at some of these results and where they meet us today. And if you have questions on that, by all means, please ask. Let's take another question before we continue. Could the rock Patricia, that's Patricia, could the rock or the stone the Baal HaSulam spoke with be one who is standing on a firm foundation? You can read these things metaphorically, of course. I will say the reverse. A rock is something that does not desire change. Is only changing from the outside. If you're a rock, you'll need an earthquake to move. If you're a human, it's enough to see a little, a raised eyebrow, a little sigh of another person, and you're already. They say that Baal HaSulam he's a heavy smoker, like a lot of people that time, and he was chain smoke, right? Smoke also kept him awake, other things. And then one day the neighbor, with whom we shared a bedroom wall, he knocked on the wall, because he was coughing, and at that moment he put out a cigarette and stopped smoking. So that's a human person. A rock would need campaigns and animal, you're going to die. No. Maybe you're bothering someone, right? So that's that. And can you elaborate on the last generation? Well, this whole thing is about the last generation. We're the generation that gets that. We're sort of the beginning of the last generation in humanity where we can make all these changes. We don't need to wait for. There's no need to. There's nowhere else to go. We can go to more suffering, but there's no need to. The knowledge is available. This treasure that Baal HaSulam spoke about is here. We can take it and we can work with it, right? We can change our reality. Let's see. Last question. Spiritual communism works, corporeal communism does not. How do we bridge the gap in practical ways? Great question. Stick with us. We're getting there. So, alright, so let's talk about the ideal versus the reality of some things. So we have the ideal of communism. You just asked about communism, and here we are. So, communism on paper, when Marx wrote about communism, socialism and sort of its derivatives, it sounded like an amazing concept. And if you think about it, your family, assuming you live in a functioning family, you live in a communist community. Okay? The family is a communistic community, each according to his ability, each according to his needs. You're asked to help around, to help around the house and contribute, and obviously the father has to go out and bring money because he can, and the child has to help with this, and the mother does this, and father does this, and mother has the babies because she's a woman. All those sort of basic truths that exist in the animal kingdom sort of translate to the family unit, and indeed in tribes that stayed connected to nature, whose egos are smaller and more contained and closer to nature, the way we were several thousands years ago, you can find these clans or tribes, right, collection of families, and they live in a commune. They live, it's communism, right? There's no corporations, there's no people with money. There's usually a chief, but it's really like a collective of elders that make the decisions, and everybody sort of knows their place and does everything to support the collective, and the collective supports them. It's very clear. What happened is, as the ego grew, this image is moving away from the ideal. Why? Why is that? Because in every society, as we started to evolve and move out and spread out and make new societies now based on family ties, our egos are growing as well. And the ego demands one thing: pleasure, right? Maximum pleasure, minimum effort. So society, a society that is made of primarily selfish people, selfish tendencies, that is attempting to operate according to altruistic principles, whether willingly or by coercion, is doomed to fail. And we see it, right? Because why? Because individuals lack the fuel to act for the benefit of others without appropriate compensation. So I need to be compensated to actually think of you and care for you. In a family, it comes naturally to me. Nature gave this to me in order to ensure the survival of the species, and I care about my family. I'm willing to even give my life to my family, right? But for my neighbor, and his kids, they're not the best kids. My kids are great. His kids are, right? This is the lens through which we see everything. And so the problem is that without this fuel to act, what's happening? You find a communist regime, which may have started with the help of the masses, because the idealists and the masses share the same idea. Let's get rid of these structures, these oppressions, and create an equal and egalitarian society. But who's going to make sure that they work for lack of fuel? Because you can't fulfill all your egoistic desires in a communist society. So they put a guy with a whip, right, to make sure that you work and you fulfill your quota, so the collective can continue to exist based on the whims of whoever's in power, which by now is not the idealist who started the revolution, but next generation. And again, idealism is not hereditary. Spiritual tendency is not hereditary. So people start something great, exalted, they're replaced by their successors, and you see they don't care about it. In Israel, for example, the kibbutz, if you heard about it, was sort of a mini society based around socialism, even communism, some would say, and it worked great for a while until they went bankrupt, because people were like, I don't want to, who's going to make me do it? The sons and the grandkids of the founders didn't want to continue living like this. They had bigger desires, aspirations, the pressure from the outside. Why would we do it? And this is, by the way, what's happening also today in the global arena. Even if you were able to establish an ideal communism, right? Let's say everybody shared the same vision and felt this love and care and everything. Even then, you would be trampled by the other nations who would take advantage of you, or you have to forcefully coerce them to also change to communism. So you end up in coercion no matter where you go. And because the people have a spiritual desire, which is eternal, in a spiritual society, you can actually receive according to the effort of each individual. In spirituality, that's how it works. As much as you put in, that's how much you get spiritually. You feel it. It's new vessels of bestowal, and you feel spirituality in those vessels. But corporeally, materially, the society is unable to cater to all these different desires, and people will continue to search for fulfillment materially if they don't have a spiritual fulfillment. So communism, as we know it, is doomed to fail. And Baal HaSulam criticizes Russia in his articles, especially those last ones, the peace and the freedom. He says Russia, this giant country with all the resources in the world, couldn't build a communist society based on selfish foundations, or using the principles of giving for a selfish purpose without appropriate moral preparation will only increase the imbalance of such a society with nature, ultimately leading to destruction. So that's really at the heart of his criticism. You cannot impose these ideals of bestowal, in a socialist society with a selfish purpose. It just doesn't work. So that's why communism failed. And as I said, because the general and particular are the same, are equal, failing in one on a national level will also mean failure on an international level. And also the reverse. If you succeed nationally, you will fail internationally, because you need everyone to be on the same page. That is, without instilling the principle of bestowal as a universal ideal accepted by all nations as at once, even if gradually, the exploitative nature of the relationship within nations will be perfectly mirrored in the international arena. So before we attempt to rectify the relationship between the nations, we must bring, each country to a state of peace, spiritual peace, and then try to do it. So in a way, side note, people who think about this, one world government and no borders, they're idealists. They have the right intentions, but it's not going to work unless you first correct the society you're in, and then that everyone else, all the other societies, agrees to that correction. In other words, agrees to learn the principles of bestowal and to start receiving fulfillment spiritually rather than materially. Materially, no go. In a family, if you feel loved, you can grow. Kids who feel loved, grow, they do better, they develop better, their brains develop, their attitudes, everything is good. Love. Spirituality is an extension of love. It's a higher form of love. So this love, this unconditional love, can do miracles. But can you imagine loving everyone around you? For that, you need to be corrected. We're not there yet. Let's try another ism, okay? The ideal capitalism, right? Each according to his effort, right? If in communism, each according to his needs, here, each according to his effort. You put in the effort, you are entitled to get what you deserve, right? If you can take it, it's yours, right? That's capitalism. There are rules, okay? You can't just walk around and shoot people, although that's happening as well. But it's really the individual at the expense of the collective. If communism set the collective as a higher goal, where in a corrected state it would be the higher goal, in capitalism the individual development is at the expense of the collective. Even capitalist achievements are justified by that, right? We're putting, all this effort. Society will unite around a goal that involves putting one person on the moon, in Mars, right? It's like everything for one. But that was on paper a good plan. The founding fathers saw the potential. Said, here's the market, here are the conditions. Let everyone work, and there's going to be an invisible hand, which, by the way, was supposed to be the hand of God, but they didn't want to sound religious, so they took the word God out of this treaty, and they just said a hand. And the hand is moving things around, and things will find their balance. And indeed, for a couple hundred years, it seemed to have worked. But when you look deeper into capitalism, the same issue. Baal HaSulam explains that we're going to see growing gaps between different strata in society, social alienation, modern enslavement, exorbitant pressure on the middle class. I see it even with my parents. People in debt, healthcare breakdown, the illusion of freedom, right? Curtailing freedoms in order for the wealthy to maintain their status, right? Or those with capital, basically, right? Leading eventually to a form of Nazism. So Nazism, which we all abhor, and because we saw the end result of that, is actually the end game of capitalism. Because if you just look far enough into the future, you won't be able to sustain this situation, right? Like, why would I give myself to so a few can get rich off my back, right? That's what people say all the time. But more and more people are asking this question genuinely. Well, I'm going to go to school and get a student loan and get in debt, and then for what? For where's my again? The ego demands fulfillment, and when it doesn't get it, it starts to revolt. So the people with the capital will have to put more and more more instruments in place to keep the masses under wraps, right? That's what happens. So it leads eventually to us against them, and so we know Germany was a capitalist country, by the way, before the war. Was the leading country in Europe, and we saw how that ended up. It's unsustainable. You can make it fly for a while. Oh, we'll print more money, but so Baal HaSulam talks about the inherent problem of this particular ism. But what about religion, right? The ideal religion, contact with the upper force, right? We have community, we have education, charity, some a ritual that keeps everyone together, and indeed, religion worked for many years. People write off religion as if it's like, oh, terrible idea. No, capitalism is only 200 years old, and it's already failing. Religion worked for thousands of years, different evolutions, right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they're sort of like evolved from one another, and it worked to maintain order over a large group of people. Now, you may not agree with the principles, and most of all, if you're here, you may not agree with the goal, but for the purposes of keeping humans in check, keeping this group from fighting with this group, or getting this group to fight with this group, what better way than religion, right? People will more readily fight for a religious ideal than they will for a Kabbalistic ideal. That's the reality that we see unfolding before us in the Middle East. And that's why there's no peace, by the way. Side note, because you're trying to solve a religious war with Kabbalistic means. Oh, I'll just give you more money, and I don't want your money. I want to bring the world to connection with a higher force, and I know how to do it, and I don't care about your money and your nice words. In fact, I'm going to use it against you. Right? That's what we see. So this is the ideal of religion, and the reality of religion, as I said, eventually, without evolving only one side, only receiving without the giving, we fall into dogma, coercion, aggression, crusades, jihad right now that we see, violations of all kinds of personal freedoms and all kinds of deviation, because again, why? The ego demands fulfillment. And if you don't give it the highest form of fulfillment, the highest fuel, it will always revolt. Always. No system is immune to that. They're good for their time, but people will always demand to evolve from that. So we may say, okay, you know what? We have the solution. It's called democracy. Great, right? Equal representation. We, freedom, equal rights, power to choose your leaders, your voice counts, all those great things, right? And democracy, as Churchill said, is the best of all methods compared to all the rest, right? So it's not the best solution if you think about it. You give a bunch of egoists the ability to somehow influence, whether through a republic or through a direct representation. You let them influence the sort of who's going to be at the helm. And so who do you think is going to eventually get to be the president of a democracy? The biggest egoist, of course. I mean, who will egoists vote for, right? So we have the biggest egoist sitting at the top, and we have, side note, I made this picture with using AI. I said put Trump and Harris. I don't want people to think that it's only skewed one way. I put both of them. The AI couldn't produce a dark-skinned picture of Harris for some reason. And the more I asked it, the more it gave this person who I guess looks a little bit like Biden. So I guess the AI was already, again, the AI, we trained the AI based on our egoistic models. So that's what we get. Anyway, that was just a side note. We get partisan politics, right? Inability to plan long term, right? Because one as one rises, he tears down what the other built. That's the election, right? Oh, 4 years? Okay, next 4 years I'm going to break down everything you did. Ironically, some of the totalitarian regimes can accomplish more because they can actually plan ahead. China has a 100-year plan. Who has a 100-year plan? Who has a 5-year plan? You have a 4-year plan, and that's in case you don't get impeached. You can actually do it. So there is a big problem here. And so we see that actually in the picture of democracy that we have before us, the few actually hold the many hostage. Okay, the few has the ability to hold the many hostage. It's easy to exploit democracy, and we see everyone exploiting our democracies, especially any force that's hostile to our democracy. Say, well, why aren't you more democratic and inclusive and whatnot? As an excuse to accept and to accept all kinds of extreme behaviors. We have in European countries violence and rape and murder and drug trafficking. You name it. Why? Because you're the democracy. You're the enlightened ones. You should accept me as who I am because that's who I am, right? All this talk is further deteriorating, making democracy deteriorate faster and faster, and the system again is designed to eventually fail, not to produce a higher form of living, but eventually to produce more and more tension between the parts. And this is where we are today. Really, our spiritual desire is opposite to our nature, because in order to fulfill our nature, in order to fulfill the spiritual desire, you have to resemble the Creator. Care, love for others consciously. And so as long as we don't do it, and we try to fill the gaping hole inside of us with material means, it just brings more suffering, more emptiness, more extreme ideologies, right? And we have the left in Russia, and we have the extreme right in Germany, extreme left in Russia, extreme right in Germany. They're the easiest examples to look at in the past. You can find those examples today. I'm not going to say them. You will say them. But we see that instead of fulfilling the purpose of creation, humanity is actually moving further and further away because they don't know how to get there. And all of that is rooted in the spiritual structure. The 4 phases of direct light, the restriction, the shattering, all of that is really at the root of this process, where we develop a certain way, then we realize that it's in opposition to the higher force or to our higher purpose, and we restrict ourselves, we shatter, we break it, we reflect, we self-reflect, and we create a more conscious structure. That's always how society evolved. So it's not the act itself of protesting or demonstrating or taking down or a coup or a revolt or a civil war, but it's just to see those the broad strokes of these forces, how they operate through humanity. Let's take a couple of questions. I'm reminding everyone that we do have an intimate Zoom connection at the end of this session in 7 or 8 minutes. So whatever we can finish here, we'll take there. So I encourage you. So question from Verena: would communism work better if it was in a society with true attachment? Maybe attainment? I'll give you a hint. Baal HaSulam spoke about a communist altruistic manifesto, and that's what we get to at the end of this talk, if I get to it. But that's the only way to look at it. Basically a social altruistic structure that has the society and altruism combined. That's the only way to look at it, and that's something that hasn't been tried to this day. So also Grand Rapids is asking, spiritual communism works, corporal communism does not. How do we bridge? I answered that one. There's no time and space in spirituality. Verena is also asking, is it a development of or a state that we are facing, and thus a state of disruption or contrast? Well, you can say that there's no time in spirituality. You can say that everything happens in you, but it's not your experience per se. That's why the Creator gave you this picture of others and this relationship, these complexities that we are dealing with, precisely so you would be able to discover him through all these details. So the resolution of the image that you get is going to be so fine that it will feel as real, if not more real, than this reality. That's what we're after. So Baal HaSulam, he said something interesting. He said, well, both sides fail to offer a solution. When I say sides, I mean the religious side and the social side, because religion was kind of like the odd one out. Everything else was a sort of an ism of sorts, or a social solution without involving the creator, right? But so religion that involves the upper force to some extent, even selfishly, had the creator, right? The clear communal framework, the ritual, the education, some coercion, but it kept people under a strict set of guidelines, which again work for a time. On the other side, we have the social structures, right? We have all the instruments of society, the justice system, and equality, and capitalism or communism, depending on where you are on the spectrum, and the idea of thriving either individually or as a nation, which would also reflect on the individual. So in theory, all systems were supposed to work, but none of them worked because they did not include a synthesis of these two forces, right? We did not take receiving and bestowal together. We did not correct our selfish nature, our egoistic, our receiving in order to receive nature. We only went with it. So consequently, every system we come up with is doomed to fail. What we need is really a society that has to change from the inside out. And this is the beautiful part about the writings of Baal HaSulam. He writes as a visionary, not as a practical executioner of the idea. For that, he says, there are politicians and organizers and lawmakers and businessmen. I'm giving you the vision. And the vision is we must change the egoistic foundation of society before we change our regime. Period. Doesn't matter where you are. You live under communist rule, capitalist rule, some dictatorship, some monarchy. It doesn't matter. You have to change the egoistic foundation of society, and you have to move from unity around a shared hatred to usually another class or another group, right? The fist, right? That almost every protest is characterized like the fist. Show me the love. No, we know the fist. You go talk to anyone who protests against something, they have zero to very little clue on how should things look after you gain power. Or let's say everybody listens to you. What do? I don't know. I just don't want these guys in power, right? No to this guy, no to that group, no to this idea, no to that thing. What about yes to something? They don't know. So we're united around a shared hatred. We need to unite around love to one another, hatred to the ego. That is yes. We need to invest in education. Baal HaSulam talks about the education towards social love. If we don't change the soil that produces our leaders and our thinkers and our business owners and all of that, nothing will change. It will simply give rise to more crises. Right? We need, if you want a new relationship between us, we need a new soil, new education, and it has to be voluntary. Again, you can't force people. They have to understand why we're doing this. Where are we marching together? We want to go from power struggles and the need to apply greater power to control society to natural principles of social good, which is what Baal HaSulam was talking about. How can I get people to learn about the laws of nature, the laws of the creator? Nature and creator are have the same value in gematria. So there are laws. If you learn the laws set by nature, you will do well. You don't have to invent stuff. I'm smarter than nature. Come on. At least let's admit that we have some good ideas, but most of them do not last. Even some of our best inventions end up working against us or expose a deep flaw in how we perceive reality. So, and we need to remember that the connection to the creator is the new and last ethos that humanity needs to adopt. Again, willingly, consciously. Connection to this upper force, to the source of all the good and the love and bestowal through equivalence of form. If we do that, we can feel it. And Baal HaSulam actually writes about the mistakes that some of his contemporaries made, or those who influenced the contemporaries. For example, he talks about Marx, how he sought to unite the proletariat, right, through a shared hatred of the upper class, and he wanted to prepare them for the moment that they would act as a single body to overthrow the regime. But hatred is inherently egoistic. It cannot serve as the foundation for establishing a communist regime, which is based on altruism. So, if you just increase class hatred, you will lead to the rise of more fascism and Nazism and all those bad isms, rather than some sort of a rule of the people that Marx envisioned. Basically, people took Marx's half-baked idea and used it as a complete piece. Like, this is it. No, but talk to any serious Marxist or someone who protests these days, and you'll see that Baal HaSulam exposes their fallacies one by one. It does not work with, it does not understand human nature and the laws of nature. And they all, communists, Marxists, and Kabbalists, they all fail to recognize the fundamental forces of creation, the receptive force and the bestowing force. And this lack of understanding leads us to seek an external solution. Right? We'll break this down, we'll tear this down, we'll change this in the form of a new regime, a new paradigm, without changing the egoistic foundation of society. That's what we're seeing. And Baal HaSulam, contrary to them, proposes an internal solution, one that includes the transformation of the individual through the establishment of social relations, of mutual love, of which economic relations are a part of, and political and all the other relations fall under. And so the working class, the proletariat, the masses, however you want to call them, must move from hatred of one class to another, or another to the hatred of the ego that underlies all the bad things that we see in society, the polarization, the isms, the excessive ownership, and all of that. That's the only way to change society, and it's the only way to reach to the state of the Baal HaSulam called each will work according to his ability and receive according to his needs. And this is the meaning of the verse, love thy neighbor as thyself. So without that is the meaning of that verse, and not the other way around. If you force people to do that, you never get to it. But if you teach them to love and involve the upper force in the process, you can eventually reach that next stage. There's more to say, but we have to sadly close for today. I will continue to expand more on these ideas in the upcoming Zoom. So if you're interested, if you got value from this and you want to get some more, if you have more questions, join the Zoom call immediately after this live session, and stay tuned for the next part. Maybe there'll be a fourth part. I don't know. I'm ready for a change subject. There are more questions, but we have no time. We'll take them all there. So I wish you all the best, and ask those questions. Seek this love, and you will find the best environment where you can find it.